Hello. Oh no, my piece of paper is missing. I have to awkwardly go to the side and get it. I'll be right back. Well, welcome to the Future of Indigenous Foods in Kalapuya Ilahi, a Chimpinafu lecture series presentation. Our event sponsors for tonight are the Mary's Peak Group of the Sierra Club, the Corvallis Benton County Library, Corvallis Sustainability Coalition, the Spring Creek Project, Oregon State University School of Language, Culture, and Society. We have an additional event partner tonight, Oregon Humanities. And you can support the Chimpinafu Lecture Series by making donations to the Chimpinafu Fund, which is administered by the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition. I want to say thank you to my co-organizer and local Corvallis resident, volunteer, and all-around good guy, David Eckert. Thank you. If we haven't met before, my name's David Harrelson, and I'm the Cultural Resources Department Manager for the Grand Round Tribe. And I'm one of the co-organizers, along with Dave Eckert, of the Chimpinafu Lecture Series, which is in its 9th year. And the presentation that we have tonight is a result of me wanting to share about this topic because I've seen a rapid growth within the indigenous food movement here in Kalapuya Ilahi. I'm going to share some background and context to set the stage, and then share a vision for the future of indigenous foods here in Kalapuya Ilahi. Following this, we're going to hear from a few individuals. We'll hear from Francine Ambrose, Danita Macy, and Dr. Lahui Whitebear, who I have asked to join us to share their stories with work that relates to the topic. And last, we're going to have a moderated panel conversation led by Adam Davis, Executive Director for Oregon Humanities. And I asked Adam as an outsider to lead our conversation because I admire his facilitation skills and curiosity. I also believe that as a knowledgeable and informed person, yet an outsider to this topic, that he may have many of the same interests and questions that our audience has tonight. This is a picture of Kalapuya tarts, and it was the first recipe that I ever publicly shared. It was shared during the pandemic. We did some intercultural recipe sharing of different cultural organizations in our state, and we shared this through the tribal government social media channels. And they're blueberry tarts made with tarweed and yeah, it's an interesting idea. Maybe it's a future of innovation for indigenous foods. I'm going to start off just by sharing some Kalapuya lifeways. So the Kalapuya are the indigenous people of the Willamette Valley and a little bit beyond. Just south of the Willamette Valley, the Yoncalla people. Just south of the Willamette Valley are also a Kalapuya people. Myself, my ancestors are Kalapuya. We're central Kalapuya people. So we're from around like this area of Kalapuya land. These are northern Kalapuya. These are southern. But you're probably wondering, what are you talking about, David? Where is this? Well, the yellow dot is Portland. The purple dot is Gaston. The dark blue is Salem. Light blue Corvallis. Orange is Eugene. This green square is the historic Grand Round Indian Reservation on the edge of the Willamette Valley. And I've blown up this map area for roughly where that would sit in today's world. This is the Columbia River. Washington State's up here. California's down here. Portland, Salem, Corvallis, Eugene. So the Kalapuya people lived here since time immemorial, since a time that literally no one can remember. And implicit in that is the oldest things that we remember, which match geological events that happened 13 to 18,000 years ago, and again around 7,000 years ago. as more recent events like the tsunami in 1700. We have a long memory within this place. And when we talk about our lifeways, we have to understand them in a way that is neither sedentary or nomadic. This is a false dichotomy that anthropologists and others have sought to try to explain indigenous people, but our ancestors lived in something we refer to as the seasonal round. And what that means is that there were winter villages that were like storehouses for goods, and when different resources were available at different elevations and different geographies throughout their homelands, the people went to those places, had temporary encampments, harvested those things, processed them, brought those goods back to their winter storehouses where they would spend a long time during winter. Some of these cycles were not just annual cycles of return and movement through a landscape, but that they were also multi-year. Some of the traditional foods we rely on, like oak trees, produce abundance of acorns every 5 to 7 years. Some fish runs are incredibly abundant every 4 to 7 years. And so our ancestors worked within those systems and rhythms of how the natural world worked in something that we refer to as the seasonal round. So Kalapuya people were removed to reservations. Settlers came, settled this place, signed treaties. We've had other presentations about this, so I won't go into depth, but what's important is that we're still here. But the way that many people connect with Kalapuya people is through connections to our region's reservations. And on reservations, Kalapuya people found many other different diverse tribal peoples from across Western Oregon, and they intermarried with them. So most tribal people today, if they are Kalapuya, they're actually also Molalla and Rogue River and Tillamook, or they're Warm Springs and Yakima, or they have many different mixed tribal identities because of this process of confederation and reservations. Two modern tribal nations with the largest number of self-identifying Kalapuya people are the Grand Round and Siletz tribes, both very proximate to Corvallis. And each of these tribes is a confederation, so there's many other tribal people and identities, but all together those two tribes have around 12,000 members. I know some of you have been wondering, what is this word that he is saying, Illahee? And if you know what it is, you're like, why is it spelled like that? It should be spelled with more ease, because I've seen it with more ease. Well, Illahee means land in the Chinookwawa language, and sometimes you'll see it spelled with an A and E's instead of I's. But the way that we spell it in the language that we keep living in our community, where we have an immersion school, is we spell it with I's. So it's spelt I-L-I-H-I. The picture that you're seeing here is a picture that was painted of the Willamette Valley in 1847 by Paul Kane, a famous American painter. And I show that just because it's the idea of the land of our ancestors before it was broken up into grid-like patterns, and rivers where dikes and levees were created, and it's a different look at the landscape. One thing that I'll mention about Chinookwawa is you can learn Chinookwawa. There's classes, including online community classes, that are offered through Lane Community College. Around 1900, there were over 100,000 Chinookwawa language speakers throughout the entirety of the Pacific Northwest. One of my favorite historical notes is the Oregon Pioneer Society's meeting minutes said you weren't a real Oregonian unless you spoke Chinookwawa. And those are white settlers, just to let you know. That was sometime around 1905 or 1910, but the story of you're only a real Oregonian began, I think, back around then. So Illahee. Illahee is also not just the past, it's the present. And you're looking at a picture of the Willamette Valley today and a picture below that of oak trees. This land provides for all and reflects our actions and care as a people. The land remembers, our history is written on the landscape. This has always been a place of abundance. The land known to the ancestors of this place reflected the abundance of intention, observation, and care that they held for this place. The indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest, of which the Kalapuya people are one of those people, were the wealthiest people in the world before the introduction of diseases and Euro-American settlement. The amount of free time, the amount of abundance, the ability to exercise their will was dramatically abundant, and we were a very wealthy people. So a vision. So indigenous foods. One, what is indigenous foods? Indigenous food sovereignty movement is the inherent right and effort of indigenous peoples to define and control their own food systems, including the production, distribution, and consumption of healthy, culturally appropriate foods. It emphasizes decolonizing food systems by restoring ancestral knowledge and relationships with the land, water, plants, and animals to support indigenous self-determination, cultural practices, and well-being. While I see many signs of these actions and examples, and I think you're going to hear some of them today, what I think that definition maybe doesn't fit within that, but that I see is also happening, is that there's a focus on innovation and intentional outreach and sharing of indigenous foods with non-indigenous people. So everything that I said, plus there's this other stuff that's going on, and I would encourage you to look for some of those threads as our evening progresses. I see this work as potentially place defining as well as open and accessible to inclusion of non-tribal people. It's on us to figure out how that looks to retain authenticity and discourage extraction or appropriation. So the vision, I see a future for indigenous foods in this place that embraces innovation, results in sustained and reliable access for tribal communities as well as the interested public. There's some ideas to consider. And if you've tuned into the Chimpinafu lecture series before, some of these ideas were covered in that. One is there's some terminology that I think really helps ground people and understand when we talk about tribal identity, cultural ways of knowing and being. And simply put, ancestral is a word that we can use to talk about the way that our ancestors did something, and it's cultural. Traditional can be a way that we do something today, but that it's different than the way that our ancestors did it. So when our ancestors gathered baskets, they ripped the hazel off of the branches, and it left little tags on the end. And the oldest baskets that we have, you can look and you can see that there were no shears that cut the limbs that baskets were made out of. But today, we still go out and we gather hazel and we weave baskets. Some people even choose to use different European-style weaving patterns, but with the same material our ancestors used. That basket that they're making is a cultural item. It's traditional, it's not ancestral. But yet, as living people today, we have people who can go out and strive to make things exactly the way that our ancestors did. And so we can call that ancestral as opposed to traditional. It's not that it's cultural or not cultural. Both things are cultural to us as a people. We also, in today's world, have new inputs and new desired outcomes. There's a few more million people living here than there were when my ancestors were living here actively and making for abundance. We can't necessarily do things exactly the way that our ancestors did. It doesn't scale. We have other challenges. We have other parts of it. One of the things you may have heard me talk about is Himalayan blackberry, right? What a new input. It's a pretty desirable outcome. It's incredibly tasty, right? I love blackberry peach cobbler, right? That's fantastic. That's a new input. How do we indigenize that? How do we activate it? How do we think about it? The other part that I hear a lot of different tribal people who are working in food, they talk about different ancestral or traditional foods, and they reflect on those as either being oppression foods or resiliency foods. And one of those that I'll give an example of is fry bread. Fry bread was a famine food for the most part on a lot of Indian reservations throughout the whole of the United States. And that's because flour and lard were commodities when tribal people were removed to reservations that the government brought there. And people made the best of what they had by making something delicious out of flour, lard, and salt, right? And so you'll have some native chefs who actually refuse to cook that food. They consider it oppression food. It's representative of these colonizing ways and these problems. Well, you'll also see that it's ubiquitous in many tribal communities, and some native chefs and others will reflect on that and say, no, this is an example of resiliency. This is an example of overcoming challenges and hard times and making the best of what you have. So there's no one way, right? And that is very much a grand round way, which is that pluralism, as a result of being a confederation, we have a lot of experience and time of realizing that there's not just one way how to do something. Who gets to have ownership of innovation? You know, this is a really, are we further marginalizing ourselves by not allowing tribal people to define a food as theirs? Well, what do I mean by that? Well, if American people can think of potato as an Irish food, or they can think of tomatoes as an Italian food, and yet those things were not available to those people from those places until 1500, the working question is, why can't noodles be an indigenous food? Why can't grapes or winemaking be an indigenous practice? These are questions that we create a double standard within certain communities and other communities of how we enforce authenticity and what can be a part of that. It doesn't mean that it can, you know, somebody can't come forward and say, well, I'm making cultural baskets and I'm weaving them out of plastic bags. Like, that's a bridge too far. Like, that's not ancestral, that's not traditional. Like, too far, right? Well, you can do that with food too. But the real working question that I have with that is, how can innovation be allowed for and accepted within tribal communities? And most importantly, we have traditions of keeping it living. That permeates through all of these examples where we are not a dead people. You have to begin to ask yourself a question. If there's only so many Kalapuya people, and I'm a Kalapuya person, and I start doing things, are not the things that I do the Kalapuya way of how to do something? And that's really powerful. Think about what that could mean for a young person when you tell them, oh, it's not just about doing the right thing, but it's about whatever you do actually reflects a whole group of people. And that begins to get to these ideas of ownership and responsibility and obligation that people have. There's some examples that I want to share of people that couldn't be here tonight, but I think are doing really powerful, interesting work in indigenous foods here in the Willamette Valley in Kalapuya, Illahee. One is Jack Strong. Jack Strong is an Oregon-born chef. He leads the culinary work at Jory in Newberg, Oregon, associated with the Allison Inn and Spa. And Strong's a Siletz tribal member with more than 30 years of culinary experience. While previously working in the Southwest, he was nominated for a James Beard Award, Best Chef Southwest. He's a co-author of the cookbook, The New Native American Cuisine. Chef Strong is bringing native foods to fine dining with his Native Foods tasting menu that you can have a seat at his restaurant, The Jory. This is fine dining. This is, you know, fancy food, but he's bringing these traditions into that environment. He also will be hosting a celebration of First Foods dinner on November 22nd this year. It goes from 5 to 9. It's $145 a person for a ticket and $195 with wine. If you're interested in trying different indigenous foods and seeing what a native person of this place is doing in the fine dining scene, check out Jack and what he's doing. Another project is Teltum Farm. It's the name of the farm operated by the Siletz tribe. The Siletz Community Health Clinic operates and stewards this 38-acre property as a diversified organic practicing farm that provides healthy food options and cultural opportunities for tribal members. The garden program seeks to improve the health of Siletz tribal membership and community by providing access to clean organic produce, outdoor recreation, and culturally congruent activities in a safe place. Along with many other community health departments and Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians programs, The garden program is able to provide a wide variety of healthy food options, outdoor activities, and education outreach for our tribal membership, for their tribal membership and community. There's some honorable mentions that I want to bring forward. And I say honorable mention because they don't fit quite perfectly as indigenous or within Kalapuya Ilahi, but they're proximate and they're interesting. And one is a Mid-Willamette Valley local establishment, Sybaris in Albany, Oregon. And Janelle and Matt Bennett are the owners of Sybaris. And this is a restaurant and these are people that are not indigenous. However, they've been longtime collaborators with the Grand Round people. They've enthusiastically committed to knowing place, building a relationship with tribal people, and sharing ancestral foods of place with others. They've been twice nominated. Chef Matt's been twice nominated as a James Beard Best Chef Northwest and invited to prepare a meal at the James Beard House featuring place-based Willamette Valley ingredients. This is what community looks like when it includes all of us. And if you have the opportunity, I'd really encourage you to check out their restaurant and the work that they're doing. And my last honorable mention and example is Javelina and the Anisha restaurant by Alexa Numkena Anderson, who is open in Portland. And that's the only reason. Portland isn't necessarily, especially the east side, is not Kalapuya Ilahi. It's Chinook Ilahi. It's where the Chinook people are from, where the Clackamas people are from. Yet Alexa's contributions and her opening of a brick and mortar restaurant where during the day she's serving comfort food and powwow classics, and in the evenings she's serving a fine dining restaurant through the lens of Anisha, is incredibly admirable and very exceptional. So those are my honorable mentions. This is get us going with some of our thoughts, and I'm going to invite up our first panelist, who's going to be a speaker. Danita Macy is going to continue our night tonight. If you could come on up, Danita.
Bonjour, Nindigenicaz, I'm Danita Macy. I am White Earth Nation, Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, and get the curly hair from my Basque heritage. I'm here from Oregon State University, and this is me receiving a blanket for being a connector in our community. I am, sorry, I lost my thought for a second. I'm a wife of 37 years to my Wasco husband from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, and so although I'm Anishinaabe Ojibwe, I know much more about my my Wasco side and my Wasco family. Did I go the wrong way? So food memories or neural engrams, we all have them. These are mine. Those are those things when we think about a food and I smell it, I feel it, I taste it, I remember all the really like wicked, awesome, amazing things around it. It was my grandma, Atwai Evelyn Rose, who taught me to gather and to love the foods of the area, choke cherries, camas, huckleberries, wild strawberries, and my personal favorite is nettles. Anybody else love nettles? Oh man, like I can talk about nettles for just go on and on, but I won't. So the area that I'm in over in Portland, that tri-metro area is the 9th largest population of native urban people in the United States. It's over 60,000 people, representing over 380 tribal affiliations. So some of my work, I'm also the Family and Community Health statewide tribal liaison. So I work a lot in food and food preservation, and in 2019, USDA shifted focus to look at indigenous folks and start serving historically underserved folks. That would be us. And so we formed the Indigenous Peoples Work Group. This is Rain and Jeremy Mason. Their parents are good friends of mine. And in supporting youth and the work that they do, we were able, through grant funding, to pay them. You know, they were 12 and 13 at the time, and they did this amazing artwork representing cedar and salmon and choke cherries, and you know, if you notice the river is curved, as you saw in David's picture. You know, our rivers were curved and they were made straight for convenience. All of that, the way that the rivers were really important for our fish and the animals that lived along the river. One of the really amazing things about the Indigenous Peoples Work Group is what came out of it. And so at OSU, we didn't have recipes. You know, our food was too fatty. We couldn't put it in particular programs because, you know, there's too much fat in salmon. But now, of course, sorry, you get a little bit of my my sass in this, which my husband super appreciates. But so bringing these recipes in and bringing them into the school gave teachers an amazing way to talk about indigenous culture and indigenous food. And we worked with indigenous chefs that helped with some recipes. This is my recipe down here at the bottom, though. Is there a little, hang on, let me go back. I saw that little stretchy thing there. Ah, there it is. Wait, what? Hazelnut cookies, yeah. The only cookies on the Food Hero website that says, or recipe that says cookies. I also have a recipe that has the word chocolate in it. That's rebellious. But when you look at these pictures, it just brings so much pride to our youth, right? And so when you're thinking about these different foods, now whatever culture that is, right? When you're able to talk about these foods and lift them up, then finally people start going, oh, maybe I shouldn't kill the nettles because they're actually tasty food, or dandelions, or, you know, think about a food from your own culture that maybe is not so much respected, but you're like, if they knew what this food was, how amazing that would be. And I just love to eat. I love food. So I'm going to want to know about your food as well. So in Portland, I love the NAYA Garden. NAYA stands for Native American Youth and Family Center. And there's a couple letters not in there anymore, of course, because why change it? My husband is the elders advocate at NAYA. And in the garden's called Wapas Nani Shaku. In Wasco, that means holding the basket, and that was a name gifted from Tukishman from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. A little bit about some of the amazing things that are going on in this garden. Tonchi corn is Choctaw corn, so it's not from this area. But when you're in this large urban area and people are, you know, looking for connections to home, so the Choctaw people, because there's a large amount of Choctaw that live in the metro area, they gifted this corn to NAYA. And something that's amazing about this corn is the Choctaw people, when they were sent away, you know, to reservations, the women sewed the seeds in their skirt because they knew the importance of their food, right? Do you have a food that makes you want to sew it into the hem of your skirt, you know, so that you have it for the next generation, right? So I love that. And of course, nettles. And again, I'll talk about nettles all night, but I won't, because I only have a few minutes. Some of the other really cool things that are in the Naya Garden is Columbia River tobacco, sacred tobacco for our people. This was something that that they thought was lost, and then they found it, and it came back to the Naya area. And now, so Naya is on an ancient native encampment. It's where the confluence of the Columbia and the Willamette River meet, right? And so these foods coming back is just really absolutely amazing. They grow ozets. Ozets are a potato that have their genetic structure has nothing to do with European potatoes. It is a native potato, which is just absolutely amazing. They also grow Enchilium garlic, red garlic, which was gifted from the Coville tribe. Also another food that was thought to be, you know, gone forever. And then finally, spotted cane basket bean. This is so cool. I probably should have thrown in a picture of that. This bean is an endangered bean. Again, Choctaw, they gave it to the Naya Garden and said, do you think it can grow here? You know, because that'd be pretty sweet if it can. This corn grows over 18 feet high. And so in our area, if you're Choctaw and you're thousands of miles from home, can you imagine what that does to be able to go through and feel home and to smell home, right? Because it's just amazing. And I'll start crying, so I won't talk about it. Yeah, great, Danita, she's always crying. This is Wapato Island Farms. Naya and Wapato Island Farms work really close together, and we're all on different food sovereignty coalitions that work to support our foods and gathering abilities in our area, but then we also work with gardens like the garden in Siletz, or we'll go and work in Grand Round with our dear friend Francine, who'll be up next. The Wapato Island Farm is just incredible. This is a woman-owned farm on the ancestral homes of the Multnomah people. But again, some of the foods that are grown here, Oregon grape, yarrow, again, nettle, that's right, I'm gonna keep bringing it up. And now you're gonna go home and go, what can I make with nettle? Even it sounds good when you whisper it, nettle. So absolutely, just absolutely amazing. The things that go on here, our youth come out to the farm and they learn how to use indigenous medicines, so a lot of the traditional medicines, how to make vinegars, you know, how to preserve foods. One of the corns that they grow out here in at Wapato Farms is Oaxacan corn. So, and then we do a lot of seed exchange with local tribes, which is absolutely amazing, because it's always like, can we grow this here, right? And with climate change, things just keep changing. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, these are my people. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you was some of the really amazing work across the state. The Oregon Health Authority and the Indian Health Board, if you're familiar with the Indian Health Board at all, it's called the North Portland Area Indian Health Board, but it serves all of the tribes in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And so they came to me and said, there's requests within the 9 tribes. They want food preservation. So we all work together to get food preservation out, food preservation workshops out to the 9 tribes, and then of course in our urban metro area. We have been preserving food since time immemorial, right? Salting, drying, wind drying, freezing, so many different ways. But as our food has changed and man is ruining the earth, so much about our food changes. When I was young, I would can with my grandmother, and we would just take tomatoes and shove them in a jar and put a lid on them, and that was my job, shove it in a jar, and then, hand it over and don't get thumped because I broke a jar, because I was good at that. But now we have to add acidity to it, right? Now you have to add lemon juice. You have to make sure you peel the skin off, and in order to make this a safe food product. So our food continues to change. But one of the really amazing things that's come out of this also is working with the OSU Explore and More program, working with our Native youth and bringing our youth into these programs, whether we're making wajapi with them. So they'll come, they work in the OSU Explore and More program, they work in these different areas around food, and then they bring in, then they come to me, or rather I come from Portland to Milam Hall over here, and we make wajapi, or we make the hazelnut cookies, because who doesn't love cookies? And being able to work in these places and uplift youth and bring food that is our foods, and see that there's so many cool ways to work in these spaces and to be. And so one of the things that that was great to do is, so for this particular group here, I taught 22 workshops, and we had over 500 unique individuals and all around the state. And Francine will be talking about another one of our food preservation programs. But then I always say, why does this matter? Why does it matter that we talk about food or whatever? And it's really because it does support food sovereignty and resiliency, and it really helps to dismantle the barriers that have been put in front of us around education and wellness. Thank you, Miigwech. And I just want you to know that this is not Baby Yoda. This is Baby Grogu. Miigwech, thank you. And after me speaking will be Francine Ambrose. Did you see I almost took it? Because I steal.
Bear with me. So I had a little difficulty inputting my slides, so I had to be different as usual. And, success. All right. Thank you. So my name is Francine Ambrose, and I have been working and housed at Iskamakmak House. So this is a Grand Ronde food pantry. And I've been there for almost 11 years now, and it's kind of crazy, but I had like this circuitous route to get here. But now that I'm here, it makes sense why I'm here. And so one of the things that David wanted me to share is that I was raised by my grandparents, and so I got the opportunity to hear stories and be connected to my culture because of that. So I'm here with my grandfather. He raised me. He grew up at Celilo, fishing on Celilo, so I hear stories about those, and then he remembers when the falls were filled in. And so if we talk about that, then we have to go back to when his parents met. They met at Celilo. That's how their marriage was arranged. So if we talk about the importance of place and connection, it's all of these things. We traded food and what I like to call recipes at all of these locations. We also created family. We made connection. And so in this place, Iskamakmak House, I feel it is my responsibility to build connection back in our community. I want to give back something that I was provided growing up. I did not know other people didn't grow up with this experience. my great-grandmother was responsible for getting me to the school bus in the morning, because my grandfather had to be at work at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning working out in the timber industry. And so sometimes she would say, hey, let's go get berries today. Hey, we're gonna go get some roots today. And I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be at school, and I'd say, okay. So I would jump into my great-grandmother's vehicle, and I called it her turtle car. It was one of those old AMCs, wood panel. It was green on the outside with the wood paneling on the side, and I thought it looked like a turtle. And so I'd say, oh, we're gonna go on the turtle? All right. And I'd be really excited. I was amazed by her, as I think about it now as an adult woman, but it'd be the two of us going out, and she would take it out in these areas where you probably shouldn't be driving a vehicle. And she was 4'10" on her tallest day. She would look through the steering wheel to drive. And she could fit through trees like most people wouldn't try. And grades she probably shouldn't be going up, but she'd say, we're gonna go to this secret spot to go get huckleberries. And I'd be like, okay. And so to me, that's what I love, is that I got to grow up with these stories. She'd tell stories the whole time we did it. She'd explain why we had to do things responsibly. We would gather roots, and she would tell us these stories about the roots and why they were important. And then all the while we'd be cleaning them, and then we'd have to put them back in, and we'd have to tell them thanks for providing to us today. And we'd share our blessings, and we would say thank you so much for this. And we'd say we look forward to seeing you next year. And she would talk about why it was so important to be responsible to these foods, because we're responsible for them and they're responsible for us. We have to maintain that connection. We have to know what our food is and where we're getting it. I didn't understand that as a child, but as an adult I understand that now. So I want to make sure that other families and other youth get this opportunity to grow up and learn and stay connected, because I think it is so important. So I work with these wonderful individuals, Kim Godzi and Nick Mull. They help do the work that we do. So I'm the program manager there. Kim Godzi is my assistant, and Nick Mull runs our mobile distribution currently. We partner with Marion Polk Food Share and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. We're a unique collaboration. It's kind of silly, so if you think about it, through the Farm Bill, the USDA funds the Tribal Commodities Program, but also the SNAP program. But as a tribe, we can't run a food bank because we're not a nonprofit. So we have to partner with a nonprofit in order to hand out food that was guaranteed to us by treaties. That's a whole other issue. But I like to remind people that commodities stem from a treaty obligation. So our food box distributions is one of the ways that I get food out to our communities. So we have a mobile food distribution, we have weekly pantry distributions, we do outreach to our local high school, our Portland area office, and our Elder Activity Center. And then we also do these holiday distributions. It's kind of silly to think like Thanksgiving and Christmas aren't really that important as a culture, but it is important as a modern day occurrence. And we want to honor that because our families deserve the same right to the foods and experiences that everybody else in America is having. This is an ongoing argument that I have with my job, but that's okay. I digress. Some of the ways that we get food is through the Spirit Mountain Casino and employees. They do a holiday food drive for us. We also work with the Elder Activity Center and the Grand Ronde employee food drives. They have one currently going for us. They win a pizza party. So it's a great way for the local community to give back. We also have an important agreement with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. They provide deer, elk, and bear. Those are traditional foods that are important to us. I'm working on adding to that list. To me, those are just a starting point. We also work with the Bonneville Fish Hatchery to get fish as available. We're trying to get more than just salmon. We also work with Winco, Trader Joe's, Safeway, Dollar General. And then we have this group, the American Military Encouragement Network. They're retired military individuals who give to us. And then we've got a partnership with Dave's Killer Bread and the Dundee Women's Club. So that's how we get some of our food through our food pantry. There are 3 food pantries in our area. Iskamukmuk House, the Willamina Food Pantry, and Grand Sharamina, and we all have a wonderful partnership with each other. We trade food all the time. Some of us have partnerships that the others don't, so we share food across days and holidays so we can support each other as much as we can. So through our partnerships is how we have this work be accomplished. So the Marion Polk Food Share has a youth farm. We work with them for a bucket garden. That was one of the first things that we started So there's a housing policy that you can't have a garden, your own individual garden, but you can have 6 individual containers on your patio. So we said, well, what if we gave you a bucket and soil? I learned the difference between soil and dirt. And so we'll give you a bucket, some great soil, and then we're going to give you some plant starts and some seeds. And so we've also started a plant and seed exchange, and we work with the master gardeners for some of those items. We also work with our local health and wellness center. We have a farm share prescription, so the doctor can provide a prescription to our clients that have a health-related illness. With Native Americans, I'm sure you're aware that we have heart, diabetes issues, and so I'm one of those. I'm a third-generation diabetic, so we know there's a disconnect between our food and ourselves, and so we're trying to get back to that, and so we're trying to include as many of our traditional foods in this distribution as possible. So at our youth farm, we've added 3 different types of traditional foods on the outskirts of the farm, and so we should be coming up on our 6th year of those camas bulbs. We should be able to start harvesting those pretty soon. So we're really excited to start having camas coming through the farm share prescription. And then we also partner with the Meals on Wheels program. It provides 5 frozen meals with bread and milk to our elders. They have a hard time preparing their own meals. This is a great way to supplement their food. We have a wonderful elder activity center that provides a hot meal, but this can get them through the weekends or maybe the evenings. It's a great opportunity. So we partner with the Master Gardeners, the Master Food Preserver program. We were also partnering with the Food Hero Nutrition Class and Food Sampling through the SNAP Education program. That program has sunsetted recently. And then, of course, we work with the wonderful Danita Macy, who helps us put on some of our traditional food preservation. And these are some of our students back when Tanya was one of our instructors. So that was one of our first classes. We've been doing them for several years now. This great partnership that started with Jared Hibbert Swanson. He was our youth farm coordinator, and he has since moved on to OSU Extension Services. I've been talking to him for years about how I want to indigenize and bring traditional culture to some of these programs. I appreciate the opportunity to partner with the Master Food Preservers and the Master Gardeners, but it doesn't reflect our communities, it doesn't reflect our style of teaching, it doesn't reflect our knowledge and know-how. So we are working together with 2 other locations, the NAIA Family Center and the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, to create this Gather, Preserve, Store, Share curriculum. It's a tribal food preservation cohort. And so we're working with these wonderful individuals that are leading classes in our communities. We each get to individualize what we're going to talk about. So we may say we're going to talk about canning jam, but we're going to talk about the types of fruits that we want to can in each location. So it doesn't have to be, we all have to do blackberry. I know that some of them will do elderberry, some will do huckleberry, we can do salmonberry. So we get to choose those topics. As a part of this grant, we get the opportunity to work with the Food Research Lab. We have a data sharing agreement, which is a very important thing that we had to negotiate. It's a very sensitive topic when we talk about who owns data. How is that data going to be shared and stored? And so with this data sharing agreement, each location gets to own its own data, and we get to decide what's being tested. And I got to come down and tour the lab just last week with Joy, and it was wonderful to be there to see how that lab has changed and grown over the years. But we're going to start looking at our own foods, and we know my grandmother knew how to can. My great-grandmother knew how to can. My great-great-great-grandmother knew how to can. And we know we have these indigenous ways of knowing. We know we have this technical knowledge. But to work in programs like the USDA, to use our foods with Head Start and the Elders Center, we have to prove nutrition. We have to prove safety. How do you do that when you don't want to share your data? So we are working to get the data that we need, that we can share to have these programs be able to use our foods that we know are the best things for us. So we're trying to work through the barriers and the hoops that are being put in front of us. And this is one of the ways that we're doing, and I'm very excited to be a part of this program. This is a conference poster that they recently put together and shared. I was not able to attend this conference, but I was really excited to see what they were able to put together on the background, the methods, our activities, and the results from it. We found that as myself, as a participant, that we had a lot of fear around our foods. And going through this class, we were able to build up our confidence and say, there's a lot of things that we do know, but we can prove it now. And so it's been really exciting to be a part of that and to have students who are coming in and learning new ways. So I got to do a presentation on freeze drying. Without this grant, I never would have had a freeze dryer, but we love it. There's a lot of new things that we're trying with it. Sarah, she's housed in Warm Springs. I love having her come over and visit with us because she's had hers a lot longer than I have, but I just love to like nerd out with her and talk about like, did you try this? Have you done this? What are you gonna do next? And so I just love this opportunity. We get to experiment and try new things and bring our food forward. So I'm really happy to be a part of it. One of the things that we did when we first opened the food pantry that I thought was very important is we had an event created by the Oregon Food Bank. It's called Feast. And we had our whole community come together and talk about our food access and food resources in our community. And it was very important to have all of these community members and stakeholders in the room to say, we built this beautiful building, we now have this food pantry. What do we do with it? You know, what do you want, what do you see? What do you want the community to have, or what doesn't it have that you would like to have? And so what came out of that is a group called the Food Access and Community Team. We've continued to meet since then, so 2015, we've been going strong. We put together 2 events. My favorite event is called Muck Muck Mania. How fun does that sound? So to me, I had to figure out, we did this wonderful survey, we got 200 surveys back, and everybody said, I don't know what we have in our community. So we said, well, gosh, let's have a resource fair. When I was in college, I'd put the college resource and job fairs on, and I said, I'm gonna treat it like that, because I know how to do that. So I just started calling people and saying, hey, do you wanna share about your program? What do you do around food? This is gonna just be a food fair. So then we said, what's a fun name we can call it? Let's call it Muck Muck Mania, because then maybe families will be excited to come and hear about food. And so it's an event that we've put on every year except for COVID, of course. We've even had to hold it online. But we have anyone who has anything to do with food come and talk about it to our community. We were housed at Chichalu this last year. It's been a wonderful opportunity. We give away traditional seeds, traditional plants. We have my cousin Greg set up and talk about traditional foods and how to go out and harvest. We have our natural resources department talking about hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. They provide maps of where we can do that so people know where they can access. It's a wonderful opportunity. We also put on a community conversation in the fall to do like a mini feast every year. So we choose one topic and ask our community, what do you know about it? What more do you want to know? This year we're doing it on emergency preparedness, so it can kind of tie in food preservation, clean water, some of these important topics that we would like to stay connected to. And then through this position, I was also on our culture committee for the tribe for 9 years. And so we created the first food celebration. And what we found is our tribal members would say they don't really know. When we did this survey way back in the beginning and they said, well, what traditional foods did you grow up with? What sustained your family? And they'd say, oh, nothing. We didn't eat any traditional foods. And I was like, that's really weird because I know you guys ate some of these traditional foods. I know you hunt, I know you fish, I know you gather, but they'd never heard it called a tribal traditional food. So we just said, what did you eat growing up? So we took it back, and so then we decided we need to get people to know these more modern terms. So we do this first food celebration, and then our goal was to always have a winter food celebration. So then we could talk about, okay, you got to preserve those wonderful foods. We share those out during the winter. And so what recipes would go with that? And so the goal is to get a winter food celebration as well. The goal is always to access and increase the knowledge of our traditional food resources and bring community together to make connections. So this is our flyer for Muck Muck Mania, and our wonderful head chef at the time at Spirit Mountain Casino. He came and did some food tasting with us this last year. We had the new head chef, and he did a deconstructed pemmican. So he had these little fry breads with some fermented corn, a little bit of buffalo, and some dried blueberry with fennel flowers on top. Fantastic. So when I asked him, when's this going to be on the menu, he said, oh, it was one and done. I said, oh no, you can't do that to me. So I'm working on how do we have our casino reflect some of these traditional foods and get people connected to them. So we're working on that. We also did a tribal food sovereignty assessment. So yeah, we had that wonderful feast event, but that was very Euro-centered focus. We wanted a more native-centered focus in our community to assess what we had out there. So we did this tribal food sovereignty assessment, and the intended outcomes of that was to raise awareness of our foods, to generate interest however we could, to create conversations, because we didn't know what we'd lost and we didn't know what we had without those conversations. And we wanted to promote more collaborations. ODF&W exists. We need to work with them. How do we do that? How do we tell them how important it is for us to stay connected to these lands and those foods if we don't promote collaboration? We just can't do this alone. We have to work with the barriers that we have and create access. So we can build our capacity, we can increase that knowledge and keep that cycle going, raising awareness and getting people out there to feel connected and enjoy these foods. Future planning for me, I need a larger building. The tribe has heard this from me for 6 years now, because I have plans. I want to keep growing, I want to keep adding. I've seen some wonderful things that tribes are doing out there, like Oneida. They have a wonderful food preservation program. Their kids, as a part of their high school, get to learn how to preserve apples. They make applesauce, dried apples, they freeze dry now, they make pickles. Those kids get credit in high school to participate, but then they also get to sell those items. They go out to farmers markets, they represent, they build all these skills, and then they get to go use those funds to do other things, and they can decide what they're going to do. And it's really empowering for them. They get to build confidence, they get to build skills, knowledge, and they get to take that on. And I hope to do more things like that. We need freezer and cooler space. As food changes, so do our needs. When I first opened, there was a lot of shelf-stable stuff. Man, box stuff, canned stuff came in all the time. Now I'm getting a lot of fresh stuff. That's what we want, that's what we need. But I have no way to store that to keep it fresh. And so those are some of the things I'm working towards. I want a butcher space. That's one of the problems we have, is our tribal people are fishers and hunters. Where do you clean? Where do you hang? How do you care for those foods if you don't have a space for that? And so I want to have a butcher space that allows for our community members at any point in time to be able to engage in these activities without having access issues. We need a commercial kitchen space. We originally had plans to have a small business incubator in our kitchen. We don't have room for that thanks to all the wonderful programming that we have on, but I still want that. We still need that. We need small businesses started. So in my previous career, I used to help Native small businesses get started. We need that. We need them. We need them connected to our food. We need them to want to work with it and get it out there and become the next Jory. We need that, and we need that in our community. We need to build them up and let them know that they have a safe space to do that. We also need more food preservation space. We need to make sure that we have access to these foods year-round. Seasonal rounds are really important, but having access anytime and anywhere to me is really important. Our members are spread throughout, and I would love in the future to be able to preserve food and mail those out to tribal members and say, oh, here's some salmon berries for you, here's some dried salmon, let's get that out to you. It doesn't matter where you are. We have some who are in the service. I'd love to be able to ship them a care box and say, here's some foods from home. I know I served for a short time in Senator Wyden's office as a Hatfield Fellow. I miss salmon so bad that I had to call my dad and say, hey, could you ship me some salmon? He had to overnight me some salmon because it's that connection to food. I was missing home. I wanted some connection. I wanted to eat something I recognized. You know, I was over in the cement forest. That's all I could. It was just cement and asphalt, and I thought, there's no greenery. That river looks really gross. And I just thought, oh gosh, I really miss home. So I called him and said, please send me some salmon. And so he did. And so to me, you know, we need to be able to have access at any time and anywhere. We lack parking. We have a wonderful pods. So we added some pods, homeless pods in our parking lot. So we need more space to continue growing. We hope to have a closed closet. And then we have a grant that we had for a short time that did these new apartment starter kits. So we have these wonderful pods to get clients into, and then they graduate to an apartment or to a house. Well, they need stuff to get them going, and so we want to continue that by continuing to provide these new apartment starter kits. It was wonderful to hand them to them and say, here's pots, here's dishes, here's utensils, here's some bedding, and clean towels to get you going, and it was like a little housewarming gift for them. My goal has always been at the pantry, all all families have these wonderful highs, and there's going to be somewhere in your point where you're going to have a low, and you're going to need your community, and you're going to need your family. I don't want you to have such a low that it takes you so long to climb back out of that experience. I want you to get up and running and get back up, because it helps your self-confidence, it helps your mental health, it helps you feel connected to your community when they can give back to you and keep you positive and moving forward. And so all of these things are ways that I've found that have an impact, and I want to keep going. I just want to say thank you to the partners and funders and supporters that helped me and do the work that I do and created this space. So, of course, the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde, Marion Polk Food Chair, the Spirit Mountain Community Fund, the Oregon Community Foundation, and then, of course, Oregon State University Extension Services through Marion Polk and Yamhill. So I work with all three of those, and they've been wonderful partners to us from the very beginning. And, of course, we couldn't do our work without volunteers. So we have about 150 volunteers who give 10,000 hours a year, and we could not do this work without them because it's all free, and there's no way I could have the impact without them. So I always say thank you to them. All right, thank you, David. Thank you.
It's pretty far to come over here. Except for I don't know which one it is. This one. Okay. I'm used to using Canva. Sorry, I forgot how to use PowerPoint. Well, hi everybody. My name's Lupe White Bear. I'm an assistant professor and the coordinator of Indigenous Studies here at Oregon State University, and I'm really excited to talk a little bit about indigenizing food programs here at OSU on the Corvallis campus. And I wanted to share I'm also a member of the Coastal Band of the Chumash Nation. I grew up mostly over in the Siletz/Lincoln City area as well, so I'll go ahead and get started. I don't know how to use it actually. I'm trying. Sorry. Okay. I was asked to talk about three different programs, or three different topics, which I can probably give a whole talk way longer than 15 minutes on each one of these. So I'm going to do my best, and I also started a timer too, because I'm a professor, so. And the first one I wanted to talk about is our annual salmon bake, and give a little context of how that started, why it is done, how it is done now, and some of the work that has gone into it. The first salmon bake at OSU was actually in the 70s, and it was used as a way to create funds for scholarships and also for people to understand salmon in the context of the local perspective. And I don't know what happened back then because I was not here. I was not alive during the first salmon bake either. But I do know from looking at the archives that some of the places that it happened were on campus, and a lot of times they were off campus. The way that you see the cultural fire on this picture, it was not always done like that on campus. And when I was an undergrad student at OSU, we used to have to either cook the salmon in an oven, or we would have to cook it on a fire at Avery Park, because we couldn't have a fire on campus like this. It was actually one of my friends from undergrad named Janelle Whitman, who is now Janelle Yearout. She's Nez Perce, worked with OSU for us to be able to cook salmon open pit like this, as a way to understand like this isn't just cooking fish, this is actually a first food ceremony, and has been treated as such ever since on campus. And for us, it's really important to have these kind of cultural fires burning on campus. And I really like this picture because it was just from this last spring, because it centers the fire in the front of everything. And I think about all the generations before me cooking fish on campus, all the different tribal folk that came in from all over the Pacific Northwest, and now helping lead the salmon cooking in the fish pit on campus as part of sharing what I was taught growing up over in the Siletz area. And so I grew up with a lot of the stories about the salmon too, and so it means a lot to me to be able to do this for the community. I wanted to share the picture on the right so you all knew that I do know how to fillet salmon too. When I first came back to OSU from working over at the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde for their higher ed programs, I came back in 2013 and working at the Kaguiks Manaina House. And when we were getting ready for the salmon bake, I was really excited because I was like, yes, the salmon bake. I remember doing this when I was a student, and I get to work with students doing this. And I was all, where are you all getting their fish? And found out that it was getting bought by the kitchen, of course, because we have to cook in a commercial kitchen. We're serving to the public through Cisco. And I was like, what? Please at least tell me it's not Atlantic salmon. It was not Atlantic salmon. So that I was like, okay, we can serve this fish. I was going to have some major thoughts if it was not at least from the ocean. And well, they are too, but not in the same way. So I started working with our Global Community Kitchens program on understanding tribal treaty rights, fishing rights, especially on the Columbia River, understanding the fish wars, understanding the role of the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission in regulating the fishing for tribal fishers in the area and beyond. And we started getting our fish exclusively from tribal fishers on the Columbia River after that. That was a really huge moment for us to be able to really honor the way that the salmon bake has been intended to be, for people to learn more about treaties and also to learn more about the importance of supporting the tribal fisheries on the Columbia. And so that's where that fish came from. We have them fillet it now because we were losing a lot of fish. We were trying to teach students how to fillet as well, which is okay. It took a long time. The kitchen was very bloody too, and their faces one of the times, because we also gutted them one year. They brought them in really fresh that year. And the kitchen staff were a little bit not sure what to do. I don't have those pictures in here. I know. And so this is from this year's salmon bake as well. And one of the things I really enjoy about how we are doing this is we were doing it there's different ways to cook fish on the fire. This is more of the like central coast. I don't know how to explain where the regions are. And some of the knowledge that was shared for me from other folk that cook fish as well. And it has the little skewers that we carved out of cedar as well. And some of the students on the side, grad student Glenn Jones and OSU alumni Chloe McMichael are in the picture on the right, turning the fish. It takes a lot of understanding how to gauge the temperatures of fires without like a temperature gauge. It's just understanding how it feels and connecting with the fire in a really specific way. So working with the students who either already know that or teaching them that, and also teaching them how to tell when it's done has been really fun, because it always turns out where I'm usually more accurate than our thermometer for it. I'm like, it's not done yet, and it's not done yet. And so it's really one of the highlights of the year, working on getting the fish, getting it ready, getting the fire pit ready. We do a lot of stuff with the fire before we start it, and then it goes all day, and you have a responsibility when you're cooking the fish. And there's one of me and Glenn and Chloe. I really like that picture. That was from the year before last Salmon Bake. But it is a big responsibility because it is a first food ceremony. It's going from native hands to native hands. You can't waste the salmon, and you also have to like cook it all. So sometimes we're there all day finishing it off, and sometimes that means we get an extra fillet, which I don't mind. And then another one of the foods that we're working on is camas, and if you know Southtown, you might recognize that area. That's actually, I've been really fortunate to be, I don't know if anybody here is part of Cohoe, but to be able to help harvest their private residence area with the camas patch they have there. I started working with them a few years ago on like taking a look at it. We did a density survey. We did making sure there's no deaf camas in there, and it's been a really amazing partnership with them. And we got to start harvesting recently as well. We did freeze the camas because we couldn't make it fast enough, and so that's one of the harvests that we did. Some of the bulbs were a little bit small, but you can see some big ones in there too. And that has led to a lot of other work around camas as well. And this is the picture on the, yeah, it's still on your left. I get like, is it the same direction? On the bottom left is from my Intro to Native Studies class last fall. The last few years we have been planting camas at the Oak Creek Center for Urban Horticulture, and that's been tied to one of David's talks actually, and also to understanding the way that land is colonized and helping reconnect the students to doing place-based learning through native foods. And the section of that class for Intro to Native Studies that I teach is connected to the Munskukum Indigenous Learning Living community too, so I do a lot of intentional activities for the students to be able to see themselves reflected in the material as well. And on the picture on the right, the student is the same one as one of the students over here too, and that was with the Indigenous Natural Resources Office with the College of Forestry. We did a bunch of site visits, which was part of a grant that I applied to and was awarded through OSU. It's an internal grant for transdisciplinary research that we're doing this year. But the students over here, we went to different sites in town that we have connected to the grant. Oh, the video didn't show up there. There was a cool video just spun around and showed camas, but it's okay. This one is actually over at the Soap Creek Beef Ranch area at the Letitia Carson Legacy Project site, if you all are familiar with that. And then on the right, this is near Bald Hill, and there's Dave right there, Eckert, showing us around at that site. And one of the exciting things about that project is seeing how a student connected with this project during my class, and then later on in the year, and now through this grant project to help continue the work on. And this one on the left at the Letitia Carson site is really incredible. There's so much camas out there, and with that, I look at it as not just something that's being researched. We're looking at somebody's ancestors' family's garden, because there's a lot of other foods there too, and I feel like that is a big responsibility to be like, how do we caretake this? How do we build relationships with the tribes so they have access to that as well, knowing that it's on a beef ranch and there's a bunch of rules around that with, but it's in a protected riparian zone, just so you all know how that works. But I can go on and on about it. I really love that site. So that is the camas part, and again, I can keep talking about all of these, and so apologies, I'm going really fast, but we have Q&As and discussion too. Oh, there's the video. Let's see. Oh, no. Here, I'll show it to you real fast since it came up. That's what it looks like out there. I don't know if you can. Oh no, you can't see it. Just kidding. Sorry. This isn't Canva. I'm blaming that. That's my default. And I'm really excited about this one too, because this has been a partnership that we started last year. It's almost a year old now. It's just under a year. We started talking with OSU Catering. Oh wait, this was actually 2 years ago. We started working with them a year and a half ago for our annual powwow. And speaking of fry bread, there's usually fry bread and tacos at powwows. At OSU, it's really a lot for students to try to do fry bread and run the powwow, because it's the same students, and we have to prepare everything in our global community kitchen because of food safety rules, and transport it all the way down to Gill Coliseum. Then they have to go clean it. One year, one of the students accidentally mopped the floor with degreaser and then had to mop the floor again. There's all kinds of things that can happen. It's a lot of work, and so I don't even know who came up with the idea. I think somebody on the committee was like, what about catering? It might have actually been Dan, I'm not sure. But so University Housing and Dining was like, yeah, we'll try to serve fry bread for you all. And this was their test run of it. And it didn't turn out amazing after the test run, but we had it in Arnold on the menu, and so everybody was all excited seeing fry bread there, and it was just a really awesome way for us to be able to have the support of another university department to help create this food for everybody at the powwow. The next year, which was last year, I went down to the kitchen and really showed them how to make it a little bit better. And I was like, I'll go in there. They let me train their kitchen staff, and I had to let them know, because if you go to powwows and you know our fry bread booth, our native taco booth, it has good fry bread. I've been making it for over 20 years for our family, and we have a reputation of having good fry bread. So I told them, this is actually a gift. I need you to understand that you're learning how to make this fry bread. If you understand like native recipe sharing things, that's a thing. And they were like, okay. And so I went down there, and it was like, you can't use the bread mixer, use the bread mixer, right? They're like, and so we made it together, and they're like, don't touch this one. And it was really fun though to be able to engage with some of the staff that I don't usually get to in another part of the university. I told them, don't use a rolling pin, whatever you do. And then I seen fry bread at the powwow, and I was like, oh my gosh, I ran across the street because I was in Gill, and they were serving outside the Centro. And I was all, I thought I told you all not to use a rolling pin. They're like, they ran over there and told them, don't use a rolling pin, because I was like, I told you we're going to be able to tell, because it changes everything. And so it was pretty funny. It was really fun. But they did a good job last year too. It was fun to do that with them. The other thing that we did, this is the newer one, is having a, it throws me off with the thing. I'm so sorry. I need to go back one. Is that right? No, that was the right one. Okay. So we were having, with the College of Forestry, we were holding a tribal symposium. Oh, I have a couple more minutes. I think I had 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. Yes, I only have one. This is my last slide too. So there was a tribal symposium, and they had sent the menu that they were having, and I was like, it's always the same thing when we invite Native guests to campus. Can we do something different? I'm like, all they think is the only thing we can have is this smoked salmon platter, and that's it. And I was like, I don't even know where the salmon comes from. It makes me uncomfortable. It's winter time having that option anyways. And so I was like, do you want to try making something that includes more native foods? And they were like, that sounds really complicated. They were really nervous. And I was like, how about if I send you a list of foods that are native to North America? We'll narrow it down to North America foods. That's a lot, but I didn't send them a whole list, obviously, that I think that you'll be able to make something out of. I'll give you a couple ideas. And they were like, okay, that would really help. And so I wanted to read you all the list of the foods that I sent them. So proteins, I said wild salmon, tribally sourced when in season. I was very specific. Bison roast, ground elk, ground bison, rabbit, quail, duck. You're all going to get hungry pretty soon. Vegetables, root vegetables, like bitter root, camas, wild onions, haimaka, potatoes, tomatoes, tomatillos, wapato, yampa, cassava, North American mushrooms, squash, peppers, cactus, beans. The list is getting long. Then I had grains and seeds, wild rice, corn, acorn, quinoa, which is from South America, pretty close though. Pine nuts. I know it's not that close. Pine nuts, hazelnuts, walnuts, pecans, and then cranberries, blueberries, huckleberries, strawberries, salmon berries, American persimmons, choke cherries, cherries, papayas, guava, dragon fruit, pawpaw, and Danita, you're gonna like this one. We put sweets. We have cocoa on there because chocolate's from North America, just saying. And vanilla, agave, maple syrup, honey, and then I gave them some ideas that are not quote-unquote native foods but commonly part of indigenous meals now, because I was like, actually a lot of people like cake and macaroni and cheese at our feasts, so those are really common. And so we put fry bread, hibiscus tea, cheese-based items, sheep, beef, pork, and chicken. When other meats are not available, vegetables like carrots and beets and peas, green salads, and flour tortillas. Those are like, those were extras, but as you can see, they had a big list, and they were like, oh my gosh, we could totally do something. And then I gave them some ideas, like you can do ground elk or bison with hominy and onions. You can do roasted salmon instead of just that one cold salmon that they serve. Bison roast, ground bison stew with camas, rabbit tacos or tamales. That sounded really good. Quail stir fry with peppers. I grew up eating quail stir fry, so I was like, that would be really cool to see. Bison chili, wild rice with roasted butternut squash on the side, or with mixed nuts and cranberries, roasted bell peppers and onions, grilled cactus, and then I gave them dessert options, like, what did I give them? Mixed berry cobbler, or in like some huckleberry iced tea, chocolate and agave pudding. They didn't make that one. But they ended up coming back with this menu that this one is wild rice with squash and some other things. They made us roasted rabbit. They also made us with cherries, and they made this one is braised elk with hominy. And then they had some I think these were corn cakes. They made us atole. They made us, what else? They did seared salmon hash, and they did berry cobbler. So they did this really great menu, and they've seen that they can do that. And so now we have which is not really secret, but it's a secret menu with catering for when we have folk coming to campus or when Native people gather. Our favorite item is definitely the number one ordered one is the bison chili, and also the green pork chili, which was already a secret item, but I'm telling catering secrets now. But it's been a great partnership with them though, and I'm really excited that they really leaned into that and took us up on the challenge and did something great with it. And it's been really cool to work with students and with other departments on campus on centering Native foods at our events and just in general. So thank you.
So we're going to have our speakers come up, and we're going to have a discussion led by Adam Davis, who's the Executive Director for Oregon Humanities. We won't do introductions or anything like that. We're just going to start right in with Adam leading us.
Before we do anything else, can we say a big thank you to David, Luhui, Francine, and Danita. Amazing to see the work and how much of yourselves you put into it. It's really something. So just want to say that for starters. When David introduced this event, he reminded us of the title and the future. And before going forward, I actually wanted to ask you all to go back one more time to think at some point in the past, like this, without maybe you knowing it, this event was in your future. And I just want to ask you for one food experience when you were younger, maybe when you were a kid, that somehow led here. If you can describe that experience. If someone's got one, there's some nodding. Danita, you want to start?
Sure. So in my home, I was never allowed to be in the kitchen. But always at my grandmother's house. I got to make messes. I got to can. I got to do all kinds of amazing things, and I would always wanted to be with my grandmother, and so going out into the fields and getting berries, and I have so many pictures of me as a kid with just berries just smashed all over my face because I just couldn't shove enough of them in my mouth. And it's berries, and it's my love of, I love my hands in the dirt, I love that feel. We were just talking about that earlier about the of that, and so just yeah, and then and love of community and people. And there's so much food on this planet, and so to see any of our friends and families and neighbors go without is I have a problem with that. So
Thanks.
berries and nettles.
Berries, vivid, vivid berries and nettles. Francine, one experience that comes to you?
Does it work? Okay, sorry. For me, great grandma never let us just do one thing. So whenever we went to gather, we had multiple duties that we had to do. But one of my favorite memories of going out with her is to get choke cherries. That's not a lot of things. When people talk about berries, it's usually not choke cherries, but I always got to help grandma can those. That was my first job. I was probably about 3 years old. I had to wash the jars for her, rinse them, and line them up for her. And we'd go out and pick, and I looked forward to after they were canned because they had this sweet syrup flavor. It was wonderful. She always had a jar of them on the table. You could put them in your oatmeal. They were just always at the table. And she always made sure that we had them after we had salmon. And I didn't really understand why that was, but it's a palate cleanser. It gets you ready for the next thing. And so I always grew up with choke cherries, and when I left home and went out there, there wasn't that many people who knew what they were. And so it made me feel disconnected, like, how can you not know about the choke cherries? They're so wonderful. And it's one of my most favorite memories because it connects me to her. It was like this wonderful thing that she did. And we grew up with all these wonderful bookshelves of just canned food. I always got to go out and choose which sweet we were going to have, and that was one of my favorite things to grab was the choke cherries.
Good, thanks. Hui, what comes to you?
It was mostly has to do with hunting. So it's when I was really young in California before we moved to Oregon, with my dad and my biological dad, he used to take me rabbit hunting, and I had a rabbit club, and so helped him out with that. And I think that really helped when it came to like learning about salmon fishing too, because sometimes you need to help them out so they're not suffering, but it also taught me about connecting to the animals and the food in a different way because there's always an offering to them too, and there's protocols to honor their lives and everything like that. And I think that centering on those connections to food in a very personal way and a very cultural way was really instrumental to me in how I interact, even with how I go shopping now as an adult in the grocery store.
Thanks.
Yeah, mine is later in life. I can't say that I was really raised a lot closely connected to what I thought of as first foods, but it's the plant tarweed, and I spent early time and early career being a wildland firefighter, and when I started to read stories about ancestral foods, there was this plant, a tarweed, and fire was necessary for harvesting it and preparing it. And it was exactly the type of fire that isn't really allowed for today because we would burn everything down. And so it was incredibly like, well, how can cultural tradition exist when the identity of my people is tied to this plant, but it doesn't work for the reality that we're in now? And it forced me to confront a lot of those different challenges of how do we still be who we are and find new ways and innovate and think about things, because just because I can't burn the fields off in August to eat tarweeds the way that my ancestors did doesn't mean I can't eat tarweed. Like, I can do it, I have to find a different way, and that kind of drove it where I'm at.
Thank you. It's interesting thinking about the list of foods that you shared, Hui, which made me think about ingredients that go into the different kinds of foods many of you have been talking about. And I want to ask about ingredients for the kind of successful future indigenous food ecosystem you imagine. And I want to push each of you to name a secret ingredient or a key ingredient for the success of that ecosystem that you're envisioning? One ingredient.
My ingredient's a teaching, and it's a teaching known among different tribal peoples as may we have enough to share. And it's a worldview and a perspective that sometimes you work a little bit harder in order to share with other people. Sometimes you take a little bit less because you know there isn't enough to go all the way around. And it's a whole mindset of abundance that is grounded in generosity, and it's the teaching of may we have enough to share.
I think one, you'll never get our secret ingredient. So just when you said this, like, sorry. No, for me, I think just piggybacking on what David is saying is, for me, it's connection no matter what. Because without my great grandmother's teachings, when Lahui talked about rabbit and what I was sharing with, when we went to gather, we couldn't do one thing. Grandma was setting snares. She would set snares for quail and grouse and rabbit while we were walking to go get our choke cherries, and we checked them on our way back. Learning how to fish, we had these small creeks on the back of the property where she lived, and one time she just took her earring off and took a willow branch and started fishing, and I just thought everybody's grandma did that. She had this whole like curtain that hung in her hallway that had single earrings. I just thought that's where you get your fishing lure. I didn't think, we just made it a part of everything that we did. There was always a use for everything. So when we talk about abundance, it was my job to be the button remover. Like when Grandpa's shirt wasn't useful anymore, then we removed the buttons and it became an apron, and then it became a rag, and she had these piles all set up, and it was my job to organize them. And but everything had a use and a purpose, even when it didn't have a use and a purpose. She always found a new way to make it work. And so for me, it's just staying connected, repurposing, learning new ways for old things. And so to me, that's important, because we wouldn't have these new recipes, we wouldn't have these connections without that. And one of the latest things I got to participate in was Acorn Camp. I didn't grow up with acorns, and one of our kitchen cooks mixed half of his rye bread flour with acorn flour. Blew my mind. It was great. It was so dense and heavy, and it went so great with our stew that night. I just was like, that's it, I'm done. It's always going to be half acorn flour.
I would say that everything's connected is something that I would think is important to remember. So there's the connections to the stories, there's connections to place, there's connections to ingredients, and there's also connections to responsibilities, and I don't think those are just on indigenous people too. Like the decisions all of us make impact our food ecosystems. And also there's a connection to understanding. So a lot of people may not understand those protocols that we have with, especially with hunting and fishing, that may be uncomfortable for some people, and they're really important to us. And so respecting that is really important too, as a way of thinking of the interconnectedness of all the things.
I think that for me, it's the secret of community, because whatever community you're in, we all have food stories. Whoever we are, we have food stories. We have cultural backgrounds, recipes that we will take to our grave that we won't share even with our husband, though you've been married 37 years. Because those things are valuable, and that's in community. And in popular education theory, right, it's not about harsh, strict lectures. It's about the collective, the beauty of all of us having shared knowledge. And when we exchange our knowledge and share with each other, to me, that's the secret, that I don't lift up unless we all lift up together. Our foods don't lift up unless all our foods lift up.
Thank you. You know, it is striking how often the word connection has shown up, both in your presentations and even in the little bit we've started talking now. And it reminds me that Francine, towards the end of your presentation, you talked about our connection between our food and ourselves. And while you were talking, it made me, like, I grew up in Chicago. Was I connected to Al's Italian Beef? You know, I don't know. I felt some sort of connection. Did that somehow connect me to community? How did that work exactly? I guess, can I ask you to say a little more about the connection that must be there in the way you're talking between food and community? And that's for any of you. How does that work? Like, what is the connection between food and who we are, food and self?
To me, they're one and the same. You can't have community without the connection to our food. Good memories, bad memories, trauma around food. And when you look at the connections between the two, they're symbiotic. I cannot exist without my community. My community needs food. What is my job as a community member to create those pathways? Is that through education? Is that through going out and gathering? Is that supporting others to go out and gather as elders get older and no longer are able to do these things? It's one and the same to me.
Growing up, I lived in two worlds. So part of my family was Catholic, so I like to say I'm a Reformed Catholic. But also we grew up in Longhouse, and so if you're not familiar with Longhouse, that's definitely a place, space, roles and responsibilities around food. We have ceremonies, many ceremonies. We get you get your first name, your first Indian name, and then you get your first woman ceremony. Your family gets to celebrate these accomplishments, these milestones in your life as you grow up, and as you continue to grow, those change as well. So then you'll get as an adult, you'll get another Indian name, and then you'll have your marriage ceremony. They've even had coming home and going away ceremonies, like when, like my father, he's a vet, and so when a vet comes home, we welcome them back home, bring them back to this place, connect them back with their food, their community. Roles and responsibilities are laid out for us. There's a women's side and a men's side. There's activities that we have to do that we only do together. And in those spaces, we get to share how to learn and grow through this. So when you're working in the kitchen with the women, when I was little growing up, you get to hear the women talk about these women's stories, and they'd giggle and cackle to themselves, and you'd hear the aunties and grandmas, and you'd see them kind of go like this. And as a little kid, we didn't know didn't quite understand what was going on. But as you become a teenager and then you start to blush and you start to understand, then they know, oh, she'll be coming of age soon. We better start getting ready for that next step. But that's how we learned, right? That's how we learned amongst each other. It was a safe space for us to talk about these things. And Danita brought up trauma. Food has trauma for us. And I try to negotiate that every day at work. I am literally working in a program that was created due to treaties, and treaties only exist because I've been disconnected from my place, from my food, from my ways. And so I have to get up and talk about how great the USDA is. That's really hard for me, okay? When I was working in DC, I made it a point to read Indian agent reports, okay? There's a lot of racism in Indian agent reports. They were not jobs that were given to people who wanted this. It was given to people who were drunk and who had connections, and they wanted to get their brother-in-law out of their face and just threw them on a reservation, said, we're going to give you this government salary and you're going to manage these people and their finances and you're going to tell them how to live. Sorry, side story. So in reading these reports, I got to see here we are, we're being given white flour. That was one of the first meals that we had to create on our reservation. We didn't want white flour. That wasn't about us. That was about the colonizers around us. They wanted to make sure they had access to flour. When that flour was provided to us, we'd rip those bags open, throw them out into the creeks, and they would say the creeks flowed white that day because they would throw the flour away. That wasn't important to us. We wanted that flour sack because we could make dresses, we could make aprons, we could make shirts out of them. And so we would get in trouble for that, and they would say, if you're going to keep wasting it, we're charging you for that food, you're going to keep wasting it, we're going to punish you. So we would be punished for doing that. So then we had to learn how to use the food materials we were provided. Now we have fry bread. Do we celebrate it? I don't know. We have competitions. Who's the best fry bread maker? I hear it all the time in the pantry. I have an employee, Nick, who says, I'm the fry bread king. And I said, well, you're the only one, but just wait. One of these grandmas are going to take you down. And so the point is that food hurts and heals. And what I've learned is that I want to heal, but I have to do it in a place of hurt. And so the best way I can do that is keep telling these stories and keep people connected and keep nourishing the spirit.
Thanks, Francine. Louis and David on connection between our food and ourselves.
Yeah, I'd say that it's more than just about eating food, and so there's a lot of things that go into preparing food. Sometimes I'll use and sometimes there's not a lot of work that goes into it, but I'll give you the example of the salmon bake. Like, we start planning that pretty early, and we have to keep an eye on things like how's the fish counts in the Columbia? Are they good? Or are they low? Are they going to be able to fish this year? And we've made a decision a few years ago, if there's no fish in the Columbia, that we'll still have the salmon bake and just have no salmon. And what will that mean? It'll mean that people are learning about the impacts of what's happening with the climate and the conditions and pollution and everything. We haven't had to do that. We had one year where they had to give half the fish to the tribe at request, which we're like, that's fine. And they were, we don't think it was that big of a deal. Other people did, but we knew what it meant. And if we were really being true to honoring what it represents, then the first responsibility is going back to the people. And we'll just have less fish that year, and that was okay. We just gave smaller portions. And but besides looking at the fish counts and understanding those pieces of it, there's also the connections to getting everything ready, and that's a lot of things, whether it's with ceremonies or cultural practices. There's a lot that goes into getting things ready. So getting the cooking sticks ready. Do we have to carve new little cross sticks? Yes, we usually do. And so there's a lot of work that goes into all of that, and preparing the grounds, making sure that all the permits go in. That's a whole, like, the now, right? How things operate here, and working on what are the side dishes going to be. Are we aligning it with some of the students who are here with what they would want to see, because it's based on their first salmon, because honoring the spring run is what this one is. And so it's like, is there foods that you want served depending on which students are here, that we can have here and order and everything. And so there's a lot of, I think, connections to the why certain foods are served at some of the things that we do, that take a lot of intentional planning and thinking and connecting and sharing stories. And I work in, I would say, the community on campus is like an intertribal space too. And so there's a lot of different backgrounds that are coming together. And so it's like connecting all those pieces with each other too, and finding the commonalities sometimes.
Okay, last question I want to ask David. Early in your presentation, you talked about a period, maybe a very long period of wealth. So maybe just want to ask us to take a deep breath and think forward. What would be a sign of wealth in the area that we've been talking about? Indigenous foods in the Illahee. And maybe we can close with just each of you naming a sign of wealth looking forward.
Yeah.
Would you
I'm going to give a yeah to that. Yeah, being able to have land allows you to um, to be in a place where you belong. You know, it's you know, Francine mentioned, you know, growing in buckets. You know, when you're looking at, granted, not all tribes gardened, but there was wealth in food and community and space, and not having access to land to be able to do those things is really difficult for a lot of folks.
Thanks, and thanks. Yeah. Other thoughts?
I'll give a talk about it that Hui referenced, but purple prairies in the spring. When we have enough abundant camas that all we see is purple prairies in the spring. And I would add when we see the silhouettes of oaks throughout the winter.
I think that in addition to that, just the access to foods too in ways that make sense. It's always interesting when people don't think that we should have access to like deer and elk, and even rabbit or quail or whatever the case may be is looked at as a specialty food now, and it's expected that we just only go to the grocery store to buy meat and stuff like that, for folk that eat meat, that is. And so I think that access to those kind of things, especially thinking in the context of where I work, there's a lot of regulations around that, so you can't just go, like somebody's family member can't just bring in some backstrap or something from one of the tags they filled for an elk, and I think that's really problematic, and it causes separation. So with abundance, having those relationships restored with the food, I think would be part of the abundance too.
Francine?
From my perspective, it's just sovereignty. We talk about tribal sovereignty, and I look at my great-grandparents. My great-grandfather was born in 1899. My great-grandmother was born in 1901. She lived through 2 rationing periods. And why it was so important for her to teach me how to take care of myself is because she went without. But she knew what it was like before those periods. She knew what it was like to choose to get up in the morning and go out and get whatever she needed for her family that day. I've heard many stories of the different foods that she gathered, prepared, and served, whether it was to our individual family or those cousins next door that show up whenever and they're hungry and they get fed, or it's a community event where somebody's getting their name and everybody'd say, Grace, are you bringing choke cherries? Are you bringing whatever, you know, this favorite item of theirs? It's that she remembered that time before, and she knew where we were headed, and her perspective was that I needed to know what it was like before, because what it is now isn't what it should be. And so for me, it's getting that back, and the only way we can get that back is by staying connected. If we don't know where our food is, if we don't know how to get it, we don't know why we got it and when we would get it, how do we stay connected and how do we keep it? We have to be in practice, because that's how we got to be tribes, because we had to prove our connection. So when we talk about connection, it's because we constantly have to prove it. I have to prove how Indian I am. I have to prove that I belong. I have to prove I should have access. That's not the way it's supposed to be. I already have that. That's an inherent right. Food is my right. Access is my right. And I think we forget that because we let ourselves keep getting these boundaries in front of us. When I hear Hui speak about what it takes to put on a salmon bake, I went through that. I went to Portland State. I had the same problems. I had a food handler's card. I had to go get the small temporary kitchen license to serve my own food. That's crap. And I would pay my cousins or my uncles to bring me fish from the Columbia that was in the water that morning. How much fresher can you get? But you want me to call Cisco to go get some fish that's been stored for how long, from where, shipped from wherever? That's crap. I'm going to get you the freshest, best thing possible, and we're going to have all the best parts. We're not going to have the crap that they're going to send to you because, well, it's B grade and they couldn't sell it anywhere else. We're going to have the freshest stuff, and how can you tell me that that's not the best thing for us to provide, to eat, to sustain ourselves? it doesn't make sense. So to me, abundance is having our sovereignty.
Thank you, yeah. So I want to say thanks again to Danita, Francine, Lahui, and David. And David, I want to ask you to close us out and say thank you again for organizing this for all of us. And Dave Eggerts, thank you as well for doing so much to make this happen.
Great. I think Lahui wanted to share something really quick with our group.
Yeah, I just had, just in the spirit of in gift giving, I wanted to make sure to give you all something really as an appreciation. There's, it's gonna be awkward to pull them out, but you have also necklaces.
Thank you.
You have a necklace in there too, so I would put it on you. These are actually really tight, my sleeves.
Francine.
In our way of giving, we give a gift for hosting. So I wanted to say thank you for hosting us and having us here with you today. And I have one for you.
Perfect. Yeah, there's been gift exchange and sort of progressively going on all evening, which is also a part of like you invite everyone to town and that's what happens. One of the gifts that you can help us share this presentation, it's been recorded. There'll be an archived copy that we partner with Corvallis Benton County Library, who maintains a YouTube channel for the Chimpina Fu web series, or the Chimpina Fu lecture series. So you can see previous talks that have been recorded, and in about a month's time, there'll be a transcribed version of that that'll go up on the internet. So if you do want to share this talk with other people, you can help us in that way. I'll also mention in the lobby, there was an information table about the canoe project. The Chimpina Fu Fund, which supports this annual speaking series, also takes on other projects. And when the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition is represented by Dave Eckert, myself representing Grand Round, and Lahui representing Oregon State University, all agree that a project that supports indigenous knowing in the Corvallis area in Chimpina Fu is possible. We all agree to that. Then funds from that fund can be used to support it. And right now, we're actively fundraising to be able to have a traditional canoe built for the students of the OSU campus and the OSU community. And that's a really exciting project that we're proud about. So if you didn't see the poster boards on the way in, keep a lookout, and you can help support this work by donating to the Chimpina Fu Fund through the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition. Thank you all for joining us today.